Hello and welcome to my review of Caroline Lawrence's first PK Pinkerton story, The Case of the Deadly Desperados, first published in 2011. This is a novel predominantly aimed at the same sort of age group as Pinkerton himself, or herself, who is 12 at the start of the story. It is, as the title suggests, a western set in and around Virginia and narrated in the first person. It follows PK, an autistic girl who escapes from three murderers who killed her parents. Chief among that band of titular desperados is Whittling Walt, so named because he likes to whittle pieces off his victims while quoting Walt Whitman. The story begins with PK trapped in a silver mine and writing, "Before this day is over, I will be dead." She is writing on a ledger pad that she has found in a mine so that people will know who is responsible for her death, and that of her adoptive parents who were murdered earlier in the week by desperados led by Whittling Walt, who hope to frame local Indian tribes for the crime. PK, or occasionally Pinky herself, is half a Native American living with a family who took her in after her mother died, her father also being presumed dead. Walt and Co. are looking for a piece of paper that entitles the bearer to ownership of a significant part of a local silver mine. PK has that paper and a gold coin. She flees her home on the stagecoach with Beldon, who initially helps her avoid Walt and Co., only to relieve her of the deeds and coin herself. Belle is an opium addict and local whore in Virginia. These things are described in such a way as to make them more palatable to the parents of the 12-year-olds who might be reading this, or the parents who read it themselves, of course. She is discovered by Walt again, this will be a recurring theme, and saved by a local Chinese boy called Ping who wants $500 for his rescuing services. Pinky discovers the value of the deed and that she needs to deliver it to the local registrar in order for her claim to be legitimised. She retrieves the deed again from Belle, who is sleeping off an opium binge. Then she falls in with Pokerface Jace, a local gambler, hence the brilliant and original nickname. Jace helps Pinky read people's body language, which is a priceless skill because Pinky's autism leaves them unable to process people's emotions. Jace wants Pinky's help to cheat in a poker match, despite his own obvious skills. Things are complicated when Walt joins the game, discovers Pinky's role, and chases her into the silver mine, returning us to our starting point. The narrative continues, though, with Walt claiming to be Pinky's father in order to hoodwink the deed from her, only for his lie to be revealed by Pinky's newly learned skills. Walt meets with a hard-boiled end, his buddies flee, and everyone in town celebrates PK's success, even though most of them were being quite racist to her just that very morning. I suspect that owning a huge chunk of the local silver mine has a way of changing people's opinions about you. PK, though, sells the deed in exchange for a handy lifetime stipend and invests the bounty for bringing Walt in, which she didn't do, by the way, but who needs evidence when the reward is a paltry $2,000? PK invests her money setting up a detective agency, hoping to prove her chops before attempting to join the actual Pinkerton agency, which is of course stupid given that she's now rich and by then would have a successful agency of her own. However, it passes for a happy ending and is all the more effective as such if you're swept up by the finale as Lawrence hopes, and 12-year-olds are quite likely to be, especially more so than cynical old men like myself. First thing to address here is the pronoun game. You'll notice that I have used female pronouns for Pinky for the most part. This is despite the fact that most people think that she is a boy in the story. She does not refer to her own gender in the story until the very end, when she claims to be female in order to test Walt's knowledge of her, while he in turn is claiming to be her father. She references again to the townfolk, and their awkward reaction to it rather makes the grey area more telling. Prior to this point, PK had used both female and male disguises to hide from Walt from asking the gender question in a way that is more subtle enough to pass 12-year-olds by. However, in 2022, with this all over the internet, it was actually quite hard not to make the assumption earlier. Additionally, calling your character Pinky comes with connotations that are still inevitable, even in the current year. At the end of the book, while the townspeople still think PK is a boy and she herself doesn't confirm it, either way, it is pretty clear that the boy is a girl. Pinky's autism is also one of those plot points that is described as a problem, but in actual fact isn't. Despite her inability to read faces, the people that betray her would likely do so even if she could. She's 12. Youthful naivety would likely cause the same results. The superpowers that come with autism, in fiction at least, being good at maths and having a largely eidetic memory, are slightly offset by not being able to recognise faces. However, Pinky never has any trouble recognising any of the people in the story, leaning on her sense of smell where necessary. It is quite good in that both Poker Face Jace and Grafton T. Brown do actually mentor Pinky at times, teaching her ways to overcome the difficulties that her condition causes. It is a decent depiction of the condition and was clearly intended to help educate people about autism as well as offer some sort of representation. The impact on the narrative is twofold. As mentioned, Pinky has both superpowers and a naivety. The impact of the story from both is perhaps not as great as the repeated mentions of it might suggest. Her maths and memory skills impress a few people, but aren't used to resolve the story. Her naivety, as much as her condition, cause her problems, which she learns to overcome. Does learning to overcome a condition really equal representation of it? Is an interesting question for the more politically correct to consider. It will be interesting to see as well going forward in the series how big the impact is given the new skills acquired here. Secondly, the narrative voice is presented in certain ways. Pinky has been taught a numbered list of indicators that she uses to recognise facial expressions. She also uses the ampersand instead of the word and throughout, such as in this example. I had to stop and take the candle out of my mouth and wipe away drool and breathe properly for a while. Then I sent up a prayer and replaced the candle in my mouth and carried on down. You can see here that it is used both for connecting the items in a list as well as linking different clauses. It would be mildly annoying, if I'm honest, even without the numerous instances where it lapses, such as the ones on screen, and it isn't a deal breaker by any means. Additionally, Pinky uses capital letters, turning things she doesn't quite understand into a more interesting dichotomy of the nebulous with the proper noun. He was opening a door of knowledge. I thought I had detective blood flowing in my veins, but now it appeared it was desperado blood. This plays nicely with the youthful and immature depiction of Pinky. She often uses proper nouns in their entirety, but again cheats this in an attempt to not be overly repetitive. The most obvious example of this is when she refers to Isaiah Coffin's ambrotype and photographic gallery twice on the same page, but shortens the third reference to photographic gallery, still using the capital letters. And Walt's wanted poster is a wanted poster, though notably not a wanted poster with that capital P. Lawrence is working a word game to create a unique voice for her character and makes a commendable effort, but ought to have either gone all in or not. The inconsistencies are perhaps at odds with the expectations around an autistic character now. When I was a teacher, I did have some experience directly with autistic students and also attended training courses for doing so, and I heard numerous anecdotes about other people's experiences as well. While autism is very much a spectrum, with everybody I met having different capabilities and needs, I never met or heard of anyone who, trapped down a mine with a few candles, a single pencil and a ledger book, could write 232 pages of a 270-page book in a single day. Some of the students I met, I have no doubt, would give it a decent go, and some likely wouldn't stop until they'd finished, but it wouldn't happen in a day. That is physically impossible. So the concept of the narrative is the sort of thing that only someone in the 12-ish age group is going to let slide. I wonder how many will tolerate the cheap cop-out with which Lawrence waves away the melodramatic opening "before this day is over I will be dead," or the final prayer that Pinky offers when the narrative finally catches up with the opening. Well, you have probably guessed that I did not die down in the deepest shaft of the Mexican mine, because there are still some more sheets with writing on them. You can also see that the writing is neater and less smudgy. In conclusion, the Western setting was a big draw for me, particularly given its scarcity in books aimed at and available to young people here in the UK. I do wonder, though, if that will limit its appeal, because I have spoken to a lot of secondary school students about their reading habits, and not a single one has expressed an interest in the genre. Even when I prompted them, I generally got a negative reaction. Though there are more books in the series, so somebody must have bought them. There are way more entries in Lawrence's Roman series, however. The representation of an autistic child is decent for me, decently executed and well-intentioned, though with a caveat, as mentioned, of the inconsistencies which must surely have been intentional, given that a simple word search would have revealed them. Inexplicable to me, but perhaps based on wider research of the condition that my own personal experiences didn't cover. I can't help but feel that the questions around Pinky's gender might have been better left to a later instalment, given that the focus here should be on her autism. However, they are more important than her autism when revealing Walt's lies in the finale. The story overall is lively enough, with thrills and spills coming regularly, but the oddities of the narrative voice do tend to slow things down with unnecessary repetition here and there, and the ubiquitous ampersand was a mild annoyance to me, but may not be to you. For adults this will be passable. I think younger readers will look beyond its weaknesses more willingly. Thanks for watching. Liking and subscribing is the way to get more of this sort of thing, all delivered for free to your YouTube viewer.